Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Back to the blue wall, back from Asia. Another frantic, madcap, but also beautiful tour to Japan and South Korea. Always feel very fortunate to be able to see these places around the world. Incredible people, incredible locations. Probably can't even tell on camera. Wearing my Son t-shirt, NOS7. Went to his boutique designer shop in Gangnam in Seoul, and actually very reasonably priced. It was only 30 quid. I kind of walked in expecting, okay, you're not going to be able to buy anything in this shop. And I was like, oh, actually, that's very, very affordable. So, this isn't an advert for Son Shop. I'm sure if you are there, go and have a look at it. It's a very nice kind of little place. But I just thought, you know what? I saw that, I think it was Ben Davies put on his Instagram or something. All the players and everyone got gifted NOS7 stuff when they arrived at the hotel, I think. And I just thought, oh, I'm going to miss out on that. I'm going to go and see if there's anything. And I did walk in with trepidation, thinking, ooh, this looks very smart in here. And I was like, well, that's actually quite a nice t-shirt. So it has his, obviously the letters of his name backwards with the 7. And also it has like a motto, nothing, ordinary Sunday is the brand name for it. Or motto, brand slogan is probably the best word. But Son's everywhere in Seoul, honestly. Couldn't walk really a couple of streets without seeing him on some kind of advert, whether it's for Samsung, side of a bank. There's this cool bit, I can't remember what the bank's called now, maybe Hana or something like that. Hansa, I can't remember what the exact name is. But yeah, it's this whole kind of bank that's got a massive image of Son projected on it. And the walls around have got other images of him. It's very, very cool. He's got coffee shops as well. I'm sure some adverts for coffee shops. When you come to the airport, Incheon International Airport, all the trolleys have got Son's face in them. It's very cool. They just love him so much. And I think he is just a bit of a beloved character around the world now, Sonny. And it's not just his talent, no. I think it's his kind of personality, his character. Speaking to people out in Korea, he just see him as an ambassador for the country. So, so I thought I'd get my own Sonny t-shirt because it was quite a nice one as well. And great time. It was like I say, they're always frantic. My wife always jokes at their holidays. There's very little kind of time to see the places, especially Tokyo. I felt Tokyo, I think I might have maybe said this in the last video, I had so little time to look around. There was so many it was the shorter period of time in Tokyo, and it was just trying to get to various events, press conferences, the match, player interviews, things like that. And look, hey, I'm not saying woe is me or anything like this. I'm getting, paid to go and cover all these things in amazing locations. Absolutely not. But I just feel like it's a place definitely going to have to go back on holiday and see some of. Seoul, obviously been there twice now. It's an amazing place and fortunate enough to see quite a bit of it last time. So this time there was less pressure on me to get around and see it. Although I did see probably a fair bit because it's nice when the player interviews are done in places that you'd like to go to anyway. And a couple of them were. But yeah, God, the frenzy, the love for Son in Korea is just incredible. 2,000 fans at the airport meeting him as he came in, and the team, of course. 25,000 at open training, and the 2 matches were both sellouts with, I think it was 62,000 plus at them. He's just, it's incredible. It was, it was again a great tour in terms of access, loads of interviews. Strange dynamic this time in terms of the media. Normally on these tours there's quite a big-ish group of journalists, maybe 5 or 6 English media will go. This time it was very different. I think probably because of the Euros, there were a lot of journalists who then kind of, quite understandably, didn't want to then leave their families after a month or so to then head on to a 2-week tour. So there's very few people there. It was myself, the legendary Sung-Mo Lee, the Korean journalist, football journalist, and Seb Stafford-Bloor from The Athletic, who's a lovely chap as well. This was, I think, his first tour. So he was just doing kind of bits and pieces for The Athletic, doing little the odd little, odd kind of long read piece and things like that, which kind of left me in this strange position of probably the bulk of the stuff from the tour was more what I needed and things like that. So I was in this strange kind of, certainly with the interviews, where I'm kind of used to, as part of the pack, you just ask a couple of questions and everyone gets a couple and that's the way it goes. Whereas on this tour, I kind of very much felt like I was kind of doing like leading interviews, doing the bulk of the interviews, and the other guys would kind of take what they needed from it, which was a different dynamic. Not a bad one, because obviously I got to kind of get a lot of what I wanted out of the interviews, and hopefully they did too. But yeah, spoke to so many people. Spoke to, who do I have a chat with? Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, Dejan Kulusevski, Jamie Donnelly, Brandon Austin, Guillermo Vicario, Destiny Udogie, Ozzy Ardiles, Ledley King. Got to watch them doing a taste challenge, which was interesting, and then spoke to them both. We had press conferences where we could speak to James Maddison, Sonny, of course, Ben Davies, and of course Ange, across 6 different press conferences and a 40-minute sit down with him, which was brilliant. You know what a great communicator he is and how well he can kind of say what he needs to say, really. And yeah, it was 40 minutes in the company of Ange Postecoglou. You're going to get a lot of information and you're going to get a lot of interesting stuff. For a guy who will continuously tell you that he's not very good at small talk, if you're going to sit down and you have a load of questions to ask him, brilliant, honestly. Just for 40 minutes, just the stuff he can come out with and the insight you get. So yeah, loads of interviews. I think some of them are available to view online. Sung Mo was doing some filming, so I think a few of them are on YouTube. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gray, Bergvall, Decky, Vicario and Udogie, I think, will be up. Maybe Ozzy Ardiles as well. Ledley's still to be done. I've still got to write up a Ledley one, and there's also one more bit of the Ange sit down to come, which is to go out. If you get a chance, honestly, have a read of. I mean, all of them are really interesting interviews. Nothing to do with me. The players were just fascinating. Really good insights. I think every single interview, none of them I walked away from thinking, ooh, what am I going to stitch together from that? Sometimes, when you get a bit of a dud interview and they don't want to say too much, or they're a bit nervous, not because of me, just because they, maybe don't like interviews, or they're young and they're not used to it. Sometimes you have to stitch together answers a little bit to create some kind of flow to it. Whereas I didn't have that at all. Everyone spoke really well and kind of had a story to tell. And that's what I always, hopefully you might have noticed with my pieces, I don't want to be the flowery type writing loads of stuff around them. I want them to tell their story. And we got loads, lots of really nice kind of feedback on the things that, kind of the interviews that were coming out. So if you get a chance to read them, and honestly, the Ange sit down, most of that's gone. I did a long read that's gone out today. Have a look on my Twitter account, social media accounts. It's all on there. You can go and read it all. It wasn't filmed. It's not the way a sit down works. I think if you filmed a sit down, it's less laid back and comfortable, and it probably feels more like they're doing a press conference. Whereas this way, it was just 3 of us with Ange sat around a little table and just chatting away. And the long read I put out today for me was one of probably the more interesting pieces of the tour. Just some of the stuff he was going into was just fantastic about his past, his future. Just the way life kind of is intertwined with his work. I asked him just whether he believes in fate and destiny, because he worked in a bank. He hung up his boots and worked in a bank, and here he is in charge of a Premier League club. And there was a lovely little story about his meeting in a car park. Just bumped into the CEO of the A-League in Australia when he was really kind of out of work after the whole. You might remember the bust up with Craig Foster on TV, where he went out of work then for a good 12, 14 months or so. And he just bumped into the CEO of the A-League, who in those days, the A-League would kind of recommend managers to clubs if they had an opening. So Ange bumps into him in the car park, kind of gets himself back into his mind. Within 2 days, a job opens up at Brisbane Roar, and the rest is history. And it's just, we had a fascinating chat about destiny and fate, or whether you just work towards your own kind of luck, as it were, in the world. So we went kind of that deep side, but we also got into loads of good football stuff like Jed Spence, transfer stuff, striker stuff, Yeah, I mean, I've got various answers in all of this I'm going to talk to you about as well. So there's plenty I will cover in this, but there's plenty also to go and then read. Yeah, it was quite funny as I've seen a lot of Ange over the last year, it's fair to say. And as we were kind of finishing up to sit down, and he was saying like, "Nice to meet you" to Sungmo and Seb, because he hadn't actually met either of them before. Yeah, he kind of turned to me and he said, "What did he say exactly?" He said something about, "And I'll see you across the season." And then he goes, "I was a bit disappointed when I went on holiday. You weren't there," which was like, I don't know whether it was to take it as a compliment or he was saying, "Gold, you're a stalker. You're everywhere." Because obviously I was in Melbourne as well for that madcap 48 hours. Yeah, I just said to him, I have limitations. I'm not going to follow you on a holiday. I'm absolutely not. I don't know if it's a theme or not, because Vicario said when he saw me, he goes, "You get around the world, don't you?" And I was like, "I'm not stalking you. I'm not. I'm getting sent to do these things." But yeah, it's... yeah, he's used to seeing my face. Is Ange Postecoglou. But yeah, I don't think he was really disappointed that he went on holiday, wasn't there. He was probably absolutely relieved that I was not there. But yeah, we're getting quite a nice, how do I put it, kind of I think maybe a back and forth is the best way to put it, which helps you when you're trying to get a bit more out of him after, maybe a bad defeat or something like that. And also, just I think managers are less likely to kind of fly off the handle and take something in a bad way, because they probably have built up a relationship and they know you're not trying to trip them up. You just kind of want to find out bits and pieces and things like that. So, yeah. So some really good interviews. Really enjoyed them. I am back now. I don't know whether it's going to work or not. We'll see. But I did 25 hours awake on the way back. I worked the entire 14-hour flight back, just ploughing through all the rest of the interviews, transcript, things I had to get out there. And yeah, we'll see whether it works. Got 8 hours sleep last night, so whether it completely fails me tonight, we'll see. But hopefully, at the moment, I feel like I'm in the UK and I'm on UK time. But I'll probably be yawning by the end of the video, which you may well be already. So yeah, I'm just going to start off with the final match against Bayern, which, yeah, look, it was strange watching it in the stadium. We kind of had one view on it, but we could also see on social media had a slightly different view. It was a poor performance in a lot of respects, but I do feel it's possible to see that transfers are clearly required to help improve Postecoglou's squad, while also acknowledging that the Spurs players were dead on their feet against Bayern. They were. The two statements are not mutually exclusive. But by saying they were knackered, you're not saying they were poor or they need transfers. You can say both. They were knackered. They were. These 2 weeks have been absolutely kind of deliberately taxing and draining on them. That's kind of the whole point. He has pushed them hard. I know firsthand the heat and humidity, Tokyo and South Korea, is mad. Temperature was very rarely below 35 degrees Celsius. Even at night, it was still in the 30s. And I looked kind of on the match against Bayern. I looked at, like you can see the experts say like what the temperature feels like, and it was like it felt like 37. And this was game kicked off 8 o'clock local time. So you're talking about pushing towards 9:30, and it was still 37 degrees. It felt like to them. Humidity 70% or so. And I've seen kind of suggestions that Spurs should acclimatise, but you don't acclimatise to that unless you've lived there or you've been there for months upon months. To have been there for like 10 days or so at that point, you're not acclimatised. You're just knackered. I mean, just personally, I went for a couple of morning runs. I did two 6-mile runs. At the end of them, I was a mess, a shattered, sweaty mess. And that's just me, my age doing stuff like that. These guys are doing about 3 hours of training every day, kind of relentless, non-stop Postecoglou training as well. And they're playing 90-minute matches as well. They're kind of pushing themselves to limit in these kind of mad temperatures, just incredible. And by the way, the reason, not the only reason, but the running thing that I did, I've daftly locked myself into doing the London Marathon next year. I did it about, was it 2013? So 11 years ago. And I don't know, it was just something to prove to myself that even these years on, my body will be able to handle it, but I've locked myself in. So you're going to hear a bit more about that over the coming months, because I am going to do it for a charity as well, which I think I've decided on. I just want to kind of settle on it, and then I will be occasionally mentioning it, because you know me, I don't ask for likes, subscribers, all of this sort of malarkey. But when it comes to something like this and raising a little bit of money for charity, I might mention it on the odd occasion. So apologies if you don't like hearing that, but that is something that's going to be coming up over the months to come. I've got about around 8 months, just under maybe. I'm trying to think what it is now. Late April to get myself back into some kind of shape I used to be, which would be interesting. But there you go. Back to Japan and Korea, away from me killing my body. Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I thought back to 2 years ago when Conte played. He didn't play, but his team played in South Korea. It was 1-1 against Sevilla, and I remember exactly that day them looking really leggy and not particularly effective. It was their second game, and yeah, it hadn't been great at all. I can't even really compare things to last summer, because last season, the summer was a horrendous mess. Postecoglou spoke about that actually in the sit-down, which... Yes, I think that's in the long read that went out today. I didn't realise, because he also mentioned about the training facilities weren't great either, as said in his quote as well. But yeah, we know what happened with that. Cancelled game because of the rain. Roma pulling out as the opposition. It was just horrendous. So you can't even compare that. But yeah, it's just, you've had 3 senior games. You've had the one under-21s game as well, with a few older players playing against Japan under-20s, which was an hour long. But mostly it's just the double sessions. Having seen the players and done the interviews, some of the interviews were done in between the 2 sessions, and you could just see they were feeling it. They were absolutely shattered. But there is a point to this as well. It's like, tiring them out now in these kind of heat and temperatures is preparing them for the season. It's like, I've seen people say, oh, well, if they're knackered now, what chance they got later? It's kind of not like that. It's a bit like, sorry to use the analogy again, but having done this 11 years ago, it's a little bit like marathon training, in that you do your kind of really toughest long preparation runs a little while before you do the race. And then in the weeks before the race, you start to taper off a little bit and do shorter and shorter until you get to the thing. Obviously, football's a little bit different, because you're going to have to maintain that fitness along it. But yeah, getting them used to those kind of temperatures and that kind of conditions, when they're playing in the Premier League, even if it's in the 20s, it's going to feel like a walk in the park to them. It's going to feel like a gentle summer breeze rather than what they've been in at all. And it's kind of one element of these tours. Look, we know these tours, the main element is expanding the fan base, making some money, serving the existing fan base that's out there, but also managers now look at them and say, okay, right, we're going to put you through kind of a boot camp of sorts to get you ready for the season. The games are pretty much extended training sessions. That's what they are. You don't look to the results. I mean, if you were, you'd probably say that was Spurs have won every single one until Saturday's match. But you don't. It doesn't really matter. They could win them all and still start the season dreadfully, or they could have a dreadful, messed up preseason like last summer and go in and the first 10 games unbeaten. So preseasons, it's about the fitness. It's about getting the kind of football into their beings, and we'll talk about that, because that's taken a big jump on this summer as well. It's what it is, really. And the fact that Bayern landed 48 hours before the game, they were kind of fresher. They hadn't had their bodies knackered or drained or anything like that. Even Dragishin. You can notice Dragishin just came for the Korea section, and he looked a lot fresher than the rest of the Spurs players. They'll have had this week back at Hotspur Way that we're in now, and I would guarantee we'll see a very different Spurs playing against Bayern in part 2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Cue them absolutely getting walloped. But in essence, they should be a completely different Spurs team in that game. Obviously, they'll have a few players back as well. But and of course, it is also worth noting that they still have no real defence. Dragishin was the only natural centre-back there. Midfielders playing in there, full-backs playing in there. This is not the Tottenham that's going to start the season. I think people just got a little bit... I understand where it's come from. It's come from the need for more signings, and then seeing your team losing, especially the way in the first half Bayern much fresher, playing some nice football, passed it around Spurs a lot. And it looked like Spurs were just kind of a horrendous mess. Oh no, the season's going to be awful. When kind of, like I say, they were knackered. And also, they had such a makeshift back line as well. And the attackers, some of the runs the attackers did, they were knackered every time they did it. They were making mistakes, Spurs, some through tiredness, some just through bad play, leaving a lot of space for Bayern. But the players, I don't know whether it was just because inside the stadium you could maybe see this a bit more. And that's not saying, I was there, you weren't, kind of thing. But it was just, you can see things better. Like Archie Gray, he did this little run kind of getting back into position. And this was 20 minutes in. He looked shattered. He was like over on his haunches, hands on his thighs, absolutely trying to gulp in air. And bearing in mind the previous friendlies, I thought he's looked really calm, composed and fantastic. This friendly, he looked knackered. He was misplacing passes. It was just kind of a different kind of Spurs team that was out there. There were. I mean, the first goal was a mess in itself. Jed Spence kind of trying to get the ball from Vicario hitting it into the wrong place, really. The ball getting cut out, goes across, and Vidovic volleys the loose. I think Vicario saved the first effort with his leg. Vidovic then smashes home the loose ball between his legs. And then, just misplaced passes. Spurs kept putting themselves in trouble. That's the thing. That playing around the press is absolutely fine if you are kind of mentally absolutely fresh. If you're mentally a bit jaded, some of the passing out from the back just didn't really work. And like I said, wasn't a natural back four either that are used to passing out in those situations like that and in those positions. Pat Matasar had a decent chance, although again, a bit of a tired pass from Sonny to him and just kind of slightly ahead of him. Goretzka doubled Spurs lead, Bayern's lead early in the second half. Again, Vicario saving his first shot. It wasn't saving his first shot, and then he poked home the follow-up. Then we had a really nice Porro goal, although I think their keeper was a little bit iffy for it, but it was still another lovely effort from distance. Bergvall had a massive chance, did well to kind of carve it out for himself and then just put it wide. So the game could have easily ended up as a draw, despite the fact that I think Bayern had, I can't remember the stats now, I haven't written them down. I think it was like 22 shots, Spurs had 12. But ultimately, Bayern had to change. You could see the Bayern players were starting to tire as well. They made a fair few changes in the second half as well. And again, I'm not coming out with excuses because quite frankly, it doesn't really matter how a friendly match goes. But I'm just trying to explain to you that it was the last game of a 3-match tour in probably the two hottest places, or some of the hottest places you could go, or humid places right now. When I go back to Japan on holiday, especially in Korea, I probably won't be going in July and August. It's very, very warm. But to see players like Dejan Kulusevski, who is probably one of the fittest footballers I know, see, watch, report on, whatever you want to call it, to see him really struggling. On that Saar move I spoke about, he was struggling to keep up. He couldn't keep up with him at all, which made the fact that he ran back and made this great interception in the second half all the more bewildering. Sonny, a couple of times I could see him needing to take a breath and stop. Brennan Johnson, there was one point where he took a bit of an iffy first touch, smashed it ahead of him, so had to sprint, and then he put the ball across behind Sonny, who was running in. But Johnson then went over to the advertising hoardings, just had to stand there for a while. This was it wasn't a normal circumstances. But I get it. Again, I get it. People kind of are frustrated about the transfers, wanting to see more, and then they're kind of projecting, I guess, onto this match as showing how much is needed and things like that. I wouldn't probably say, other than the striker, I think the striker was where I definitely think you could look at it and say, clearly you need someone in the middle there kind of putting his chances away. I think Decky's done very well as a false nine, but that's an option for a certain tactical scenarios. It's not your go-to option. But I think, you can't really judge the defence. And, I've got... Let's have a look. Yes, I've got a Postecoglou quote. He said, I thought it was a tough game for us. Fair to say the players are feeling the effects of us working hard for the last 10 days here, and we didn't look really sharp, particularly in that first half, and we had to work hard. But the players, I think for us, what's important is I think we'll get enormous benefit out of the camp we've had here, and I think we paid a price a little bit tonight for the work we've done. for us, the really important thing was that we got 10 days of really good, solid training. The guys will feel the benefits of what we've done here when we get back. Just working hard in this weather day after day. I've lived here. I know it can become pretty draining mentally and physically, but I think for the most part, the players have tried to push through that, and we're getting an enormous amount of benefit from a physical perspective out of the 10 days we were here and from the games. I mean, there's stuff there that we did really well, other stuff we've still got to improve on, but I think it's allowed us to get a really good base now fitness-wise. So when we get back, we obviously got to integrate 2 or 3 other players who are coming back, and I've got a 2-week lead-in to freshen them up for the season ahead. So yeah, pretty much all the stuff I've just said. And then someone asked him, I think it was a local journalist, whether he had any concerns from what he saw to take into the season. And he said, no, as I just said, pre-season is about getting prepared for a season. We haven't had Destiny, a doggy. Yeah, Destiny wasn't. It looked like he was going to be playing. So I feel like even Postecoglou might have said he was going to play a part, but he didn't on the day. Whether they just felt maybe it was a little bit too early to push him in. He's been out a long time, hasn't he? I mean, was it April, that injury? So yeah, so we haven't had Destiny either. I mean, our starting back 4, we haven't had 3 of those players, which we knew. So I think what's more important for me is, like I said, 10 good days of hard work, which you need in pre-season. As far as I know, you don't get points for friendly games. So for me, what's important is that we use these 10 days to go back home and start preparing for the first league game. Yeah, I mean, you'll have Romero and Van de Ven back for, I think they were back, it's either today or tomorrow, I can't remember which it is, but it's certainly back for this week of training. Would think we'll be able to play 45 minutes of the second Bayern game. For those players as well, maybe not Van de Ven because he didn't play too much, but certainly Romero was playing a lot of football, and Bentancur as well, of course, Lo Celso also back. But they were playing a lot of football in the Copa America, and obviously they've only had, 2-3 weeks off now. So they're not going to come back absolutely out of their rhythm or anything like that. They just need a little bit of a top-up. It's probably less so than the players, that came back having not been in international tournaments as well. So, like I said, I don't think Postecoglou will look at that match and draw too many conclusions on certain players. I think the key, that's what I'm going to do now, is maybe draw conclusions on the players across the tour. You probably can. I mean, for me, I think out of the senior players, Sonny, Decky and Pedro Porro probably look the sharpest across the bunch. I think they'll hit the ground running in the season. I would say James Maddison, Yves Bissouma, a little bit more inconsistent. We've seen flashes of kind of how good they can be, and other parts in game where they've struggled to impact them. Bissouma, I mean, he hasn't played beyond 45 minutes yet, I don't think, unless I'm mistaken. He's been used in the second half of both of the last couple of games. Whether that is just because they don't believe he can handle an hour or so of football yet, or whether it is because, maybe they're starting to see that Archie Gray just deserves a little bit more game time. Archie Gray's got a lot of minutes, which suggests he's going to be getting lots of minutes in the season, which is kind of what I have kind of been predicting. So, yeah, who else? I mean, Bissouma came on, just reminded me. Came on and the ball just rolled straight under his foot on one thing and kind of led to a bit of a Bayern potential attack. It does make you think back to when we were talking about Bissouma after the QPR game when he scored that lovely goal, and Postecoglou walked by and said, "It's only a friendly Bis." And it's going like, he's proven since over the bulk of these. There's a couple of little moments he's played well in his games, but yeah, it does show you kind of. I know these are only friendlies as well, but he's got to kind of maintain the consistency regardless. I thought Pat Matasar, after having a couple of slightly shaky games, I felt was really good against Bayern. Much more the driving force we know he can be. His fitness is always superb. Brennan Johnson, he hasn't really found his rhythm yet, I don't think. He's putting some dangerous balls and being involved in some decent moments, but I feel like his touch has been quite inconsistent. One Porro ball in the first half, I think against Bayern, was a really good one. And he ended up kind of running it out of play. And it was just little disappointing moments like that for him, really. And again, that moment when he kind of had to rest against the advertising hoarding, he had a great chance to put a really good ball in and played it behind everyone. It's not been the greatest tours in terms of his sharpness, but hopefully fitness-wise. don't forget last season he didn't really have a pre-season. He had an injury in pre-season for Forest. So he kind of arrived without that, and then he had the hamstring injury not long after that. So hopefully fitness-wise, this will be a big thing for him going into this season. That'll really help him out. Jed Spence had a great tour. Really big one for him, really. I asked in the sit-down Postecoglou about Jed Spence, quite kind of fittingly in a way, because my last question of it was, I'm going to say sit-down, it was more a huddle in a corridor with Conte 2 years ago in Korea. The last question I put in there was about Jed, and he got the infamous club signing line. So I kind of felt it was quite fitting to maybe ask the last question this time around I had of Jed to Postecoglou. And thankfully, it's a much more positive answer because he's done well. He has done well. This was his answer in case you missed it. I think with Jed, for me, we got him back into pre-season and we're judging him on his merits. He's a Tottenham player. To be fair to him, I think he's been very, very good for us this pre-season in terms of the way he's trained and his general attitude. But a lot of these things are in the players' hands themselves. They kind of decide their own future in many respects, and I think Jed is in that boat. I think there's an opportunity for him for sure. Thinking about building a squad, he would definitely be somebody who could contribute with the attributes he has. I thought last year there was a chance, but it didn't quite work out. For those kind of things, I think sometimes players really wait for direction when they can really take control of their own direction. Jed's here, he's a Spurs player, he's a very good player who fits into our football, and so it's as much about him as it is about me making a decision. As you see right now, he's been very good pre-season, he's been very good on the tour, he impressed all the coaches, not just myself. For some of them, it's the first time they've worked with him and they've all been really impressed with him. Maybe he's learned a couple of things over the last couple of years about himself, and hopefully we can sort of bear the fruit of that. So I thought that was lovely. I thought it was a really good answer from him. A really kind of positive thing for Jed himself. And just kind of a show that if he absolutely knuckles down, puts the effort in, shows the perfect attitude, plays well, this is what happens. He's going to get noticed, he's going to get recognised, and hey, it would really kick his career on. It would save Spurs some money because, as Postecoglou was saying, he fits his football nicely. He was quite good at coming into the inverted role, playing through the middle at times as well. And, you know, not saving money from like a kind of a, you know, trying to skimp and on spending. They've already spent on him. You might as well, if you've got a very good right back who can play the system, and he's absolutely into kind of, you know, into this headspace where he can really be a success at Spurs, why not use him? Why spend the same amount of money on another right back when you've got one there already? I mean, it was difficult for him, I did feel, on Saturday, he kind of got his first start, and it was a big thing, but he's on the left. And he's played there a couple of times. He's played there for, I think, Rennes, Leeds, and I think also Genoa as well as left back at times. So he can do it, but obviously it's not going to play into his natural strengths. And of course he had that little kind of moment with Vicario early on, which I think was more Vicario. There's definitely an element of Jed asking for the ball in that situation when maybe it wasn't the best time to play it, but I did think Vicario actually messed up. Maybe Jed wasn't also aware of the player coming in behind him as well. And there was, I think early on, I did sense that he was a little bit like nervous and jumpy and kind of jumping into stuff he didn't need to. And they got down his side a couple of times as well. But I did feel like he just composed himself a little bit. And he got better and better for me as the game wore on. He made a couple of really good sliding interceptions right in front of Postecoglou, which I think was really important because Postecoglou really praised him. I could see him down there doing it. And I think that just helped stoke him up. And then he wasn't taken off at half-time, came on again for the second half. And he made one lovely flying, driving run down through the middle. I think he got the ball out to Son, who had a shot, and it came back and Kulusevski hit it just wide. So I actually thought it was quite positive overall, even though he was on the wrong side. And yeah, it's one of those where I think a right back is something Spurs would have probably looked at the start of the summer, you know, with Emerson likely to go. Although, yeah, I'm still waiting to get some second sources and stuff about Emerson. I don't know whether Milan are slightly stepping away or certainly cooling a little bit or not. We'll see. Again, it's very early kind of stuff about Personally, I still feel it's something that will probably go through because Milan want him and he wants Milan. But I kind of just heard some little bits and pieces today that maybe, I don't know, maybe they're just struggling to come to a compromise at the moment or not. It's one that's probably more from the Milan side, I'm guessing. They're the ones that have kind of got to do the spending. But we'll see. We'll see. There's plenty of other interest in Emerson anyway. But back to what I was saying. At the start of the summer, you would have thought with just Porro, with Emerson going, probably would need another right back. But if Jed continues on this path that he's going on and doing incredibly well, not only have you got him as another right back, but you've got Archie Gray who can play there as well. So it kind of feels like why throw money at that position when you can put that elsewhere? What else do we have? Second half, a couple of bright performances again. Although, as Postecoglou did say, the intensity dropped a bit from Bayern as well, because Bayern did start to tire. I thought Lucas Bergvall was bright again. He's going to be a very exciting player in this squad. He really is. I think he's going to take a little while to get the fitness up. I think that's definitely going to be the biggest leap for him. But technically, and I actually think kind of strength-wise, physically, he can hold his own quite well. He's quite a big lad. I mean, he's not like Archie Gray is very tall. He's a really big lad. But Lucas Bergvall has got a bit of strength about him. And I just feel like he's probably further along in the process than maybe even like we or Spurs expected. I've just got this feeling that at some point this season, maybe even in the first half of the season, he's going to do something quite magical. And Postecoglou is going to know he's ready. And we're probably going to do some kind of segment on Match of the Day all about him. I just got this feeling that it's coming. I definitely expected him to be a little further off than he is in terms of how he's impacting matches and the way he's dictating the tempo of games and mainly the physical stuff. The fact that he's sliding into challenges, got a bit of bite about him as well. He's been preparing, and you can see that. He's prepared well. I do think fitness-wise, it might be a while till he's able to start games and play more than maybe like 15, 20-minute cameos. We know the pace and everything. But again, going back to the heat and humidity, I do think this will have done him the world of good as well. So, he's a very popular lad in Korea as well. Every time the camera went on him in the game, you could hear a lot of swooning in the crowd. You know, he does have these boy band looks, and there was a lot of excitement, let's put it that way, among the Korean fans for him. And he's just got this no-fear approach to the way he plays. He'll try stuff. He's creative. He's got the Postecoglou kind of player stamped all over him, really. And I mean, at the moment, he probably is the Maddison alternative, and that may push Maddison on as well, because to know you've got someone that incredibly talented, a young player waiting to come through, it's on you, because you've not got a guaranteed spot in the team, even though you're a vice captain. You can really see why Barcelona tried to sign him. He's got a bit of the Barcelona way about him as Bergvall. I also thought Alfie Divine was superb. For some reason, I keep calling him Archie Divine when I'm writing stuff at the moment. Even though I've written about him for a few years now, I think it's Archie Gray has messed up my head. And I'm kind of splicing the two into this genetic mutant. But Alfie Divine, I think he's had a terrific tour. Hasn't played as many minutes as Bergvall, I don't think. But every moment he's spent on the pitch, I think he's done very well. I think he's used the ball well, very neat and tidy in the ball. I still feel another loan probably beckons for him, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think he needs that. I think he needs the first team football to continuously develop. But he's just got a really nice eye for a pass and moving the ball quickly. Very much kind of brought up in this Postecoglou style in the last year or so. And he's taken that clearly with him on his loans and he's come back looking like a very good young professional player as well. So I asked Postecoglou about the two of them and then how they played in the second half. And he said, I thought we were better in the second half. Those players, don't forget, have played less minutes. So in other words, they're a fresher. I thought we looked pretty tired today, and it's understandable because the players have worked really hard and you're playing against a strong opponent. It's not fair to judge the players on their performance tonight. But yeah, I did think the second half were a lot brighter. The guys who came on gave us some energy, and Lucas and Alfie and Emerson, I thought, came on and gave us some aggression as well. Look, it was a better half, but I think the intensity dropped as well, which has allowed us to get into the game. Which I think is fair. You know, that's why I'm probably not going to go overboard saying it's the most incredible thing ever. but certainly I did feel like it was another little bright cameo from the two of them. I do also think praise on this tour has to go to those who have filled in unnatural roles. I mean, Archie Gray obviously centre back early on, but Skippy's played there a few times. Jamie Donnelly at left back has just been terrific when you think about the fact that it's just a position he's not played. He's an attacking midfielder / forward, more so an attacking midfielder nowadays. I asked Destiny Doggy about Jamie, and he said he's an incredible player. He knows him really well. I think the two of them get on really well. So yeah, he just was so impressed with the way that Jamie had adapted to it. And yeah, so I asked what's his name? Postecoglou, that's the one, about those players that have filled in and how kind of important they've been for this tour. And he said they have been important. It's probably been my one concern coming into the tour was because you're playing players out of the position. So the games could become a little bit unrealistic. But I thought the guys who had to fill in the whole tour have been really good. Skippy and Jamie Donnelly, Emerson, of course, as well, playing at centre-back. So I think it's allowed us to at least get something out of the games, because I think if those positions didn't work out, it would have been hard for us to sort of analyse. But I think they're all contributed to us trying to get as much as we can out of the camp. So yeah, it was a bit of a crazy mix zone after the game. Mix zone is where you go down to interview the players in the stadium afterwards, if you're not aware of what those are. But normally in a mix zone, you have a big kind of roped off area, and essentially the players can stop at any point of it and talk to various journalists. The one in Korea, which is mad, was that instead they took the player to like a little podium with a microphone, and then all of the 50 journalists, 60 journalists, camera crews and everything swarmed into this very warm and uncomfortable huddle to you couldn't even get a dictaphone near them to record what was happening. So I kind of ended up just giving up a bit. It's like, there's no point me going there to get 90 seconds from, I think it was Radu Dragic went up there. So I ended up kind of just standing at the side and essentially being like the waving goodbye man to, as the Spurs players were coming out of their dressing room, just going, see ya. See you, Destiny. Have a nice flight. It was very weird. It wasn't what I intended to do, but it was just because I was watching the mix zone stuff from afar and realised, I'm there as they're all coming out. So I just kind of said pleasant goodbyes. And Eric Dyer had been in there. Eric Dyer had been in the Spurs dressing room catching up with people. I think you've seen the video of Sonny doing the shirt swap with Kim Min-jae as well, which was quite a funny one. And they're all heading out with a little kind of packaged meal in their hands that they're going to have on the coach, because they were flying straight back off back home. I think they arrived about 10:30 yesterday morning. I don't know how that works, whether they were going straight to the lodge. You'd presume they'd let them just go back and be with their families, you would think. But yeah, and now we'll find out with a lot of those under-21s players. I do feel like this was the tour for the under-21s. I felt like they were the ones, as well as Jed Spence, that really kind of made a great impression of themselves, or gave a great impression of themselves as well. And now we're in that stage where we'll find out what happens with them. Do they head out on loan? Do they stick around the club for the Europa League and the domestic cup games? The world's their oyster right now. And their development under Wayne Burnett for the under-21s and Stuart Lewis for the under-18s kind of has really prepared them for this Postecoglou system. It's worked really nicely. I mean, you look at Will Lankshire's kind of became the go-to natural striker of this tour. Bearing in mind, Decky was playing up front as the false nine. We barely saw anything of Dane Scarlett or Alejo Vilis. They didn't even come on in the last two games, did they? I don't think. Will Lankshire was coming on and getting, 20, 30 minutes or so, which was great for him. Brilliant for his development. He did well, really physical kind of play. So he's keeping two older players out of the team, and I do wonder what that means for them now. Whether you send Lancashire on a loan or whether you keep him around the club, which are kind of at a position that maybe that makes more sense. We'll see. Obviously, there is another striker will come in. They will. And then we'll see. But yeah, for Vilis and Scarlett, I do wonder whether you now start looking at loans for them, because they just haven't really played a part in pre-season too much since. Obviously, Dane scored that goal. Was it QPR? Was it second goal at QPR? I think it was. And also Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore had a terrific tour, still just 16 for another 5-6 days or so. He's kept Manor Solomon out. Manor Solomon hasn't had any minutes. I mean, he hasn't looked great. Kind of understandable after 10 months out, but he just looks to have lost a little bit of explosive kind of acceleration, which hopefully will come back. It's just a case of, I suppose, building up the strength in his leg and confidence in his knee again. But yeah, Mikey Moore has just kept him out. He's 16 years old. It's just mad. Loads of decisions for, I think, Postecoglou to make about these loan players. I thought George Abbott came in, did very well. Like I said, Alfie Divine. Tyrese Hall didn't get too much time, but, you know, a good experience for him. So, yeah, I thought Brandon Austin, I know he's not young anymore, but 25 years old. Really good interview with him. He really explained the process of the decision about staying at Spurs and the 5-year contract, even though he's never played a competitive game for the club, and how it's just different for goalkeepers and how he's got this kind of belief in himself. I do get the feeling that he's probably going to end up becoming the number 2. I mean, Fraser Forster, I didn't get a chance to ask for an update on him, but bearing in mind, he has been out, it's about 6 months now with a knee injury. Was it a knee injury? No, sorry, fractured foot, which was supposed to only keep him out for 2 months, I think was the original time estimate put on that. And you know, to be out 6 months, that's not good. That's definitely not good. It's kind of gone into the Spurs injury black hole that we sometimes see people falling down. But yeah, I kind of get the impression. But Brandon Austin, I think, has had a really good tour. Has made a lot of terrific saves in games as well. So yeah, we'll see over the next few weeks about players heading off. It seems like maybe Niall John, obviously not part of this tour, but he'll be heading off. And yeah, I think there'll be a few others as well that'll be heading out the door. What other decisions we've got? Obviously, most important is bringing in new players. We know that. You've got Romero, Van der Ven, Bentancur, Lo Celso coming back. Obviously, how long Lo Celso spends at the club, we'll see and see what interest there is in him. But most pressing of all for me is a striker. That's the biggie for me out of anything. Richarlison went on tour. It was like a cheerleader of sorts. I saw him doing some little individual bits and pieces and running and exercise, but no stuff with the team. Whether that changes this week, we'll see. But that's not good, especially when he's a player that's had that lack of availability over the last couple of seasons since arriving for 60 million. And there's continuously going to be talk about him potentially leaving. The Saudi Pro League club's interested in him. And I still do feel that if Spurs get a big offer that's near what they spent for him, I think they take it just because of the lack of availability and the injury worries. Again, it's down to him, though. He may decide, yeah, you're right, but I don't actually want to go there, and in which case, of course, nothing happens. But yeah, it's hasn't been a kind of a good little time for him at all, really. Of course, we know Dominic Solanke is one of the ones that I've spoken about him in the past, and Guesty and I have spoken about in the pod and how we both feel he refits the system. But the feeling has always been it was probably just such a big price tag on him. I think the club owner, the Bournemouth club owner, has talked about there being have I written it down here? No, I don't think I have. About there being like a potentially 60, 65 million pound release clause, which, in today's market, it's kind of what domestic homegrown players that have scored a load of goals in a season are going for. Bournemouth are, from what I understand, kind of looking at potential replacements in case he goes. Cameron Archer at Villa is someone they've looked at. There was another player from abroad who's gone out of my mind as well that we're looking at. I mean, Solanke's 26. I think he's 27 next month. Scored 21 goals last season, 19 in the Premier League. I think he was 4th joint top scorer in the Premier League. But he also fits the system because I think he was up there among the, if not the highest for pressing from the front, turnovers in the final third. That's the Postecoglou way. That's what he wants. He would absolutely fit the system down to a T. And I was talking to some kind of people about him over the last couple of weeks, and a few people said the same thing. If you watch his goals from last season, a lot of the goals he scored were from Postecoglou type situations, the low ball into the box and him finishing it off. He's not a one-season striker. I've seen this kind of thing bandied around. I looked it up. last 4 seasons, he's scored 73 goals across the last 4 seasons as he's continued to develop. I think it's mainly because he had a bit of a quiet season, not the last one, but the one before when Bournemouth first came back into the Premier League again. And I think that's kind of what it is. And obviously before that, he was a young player. Obviously had a couple of decent seasons in the Championship. But before, when he was in the Premier League, he was a young player, very, very young player. So, yeah, 73 goals over the last 4 seasons is okay. That's decent. And I do feel like he's a player that's approaching his peak now. Like I say, it is a massive price tag. But we've spoken about Richarlison. Richarlison was 60 million, and Solanke's got a better goal record than Richarlison did. I asked Postecoglou about signing a striker. I kind of went a little indirect with the question because I'd asked him about potentially signing a striker in a press conference a week before or so, and he'd been very vague and not really giving anything away on it. But maybe, again, because of the comfort of the sit-down, he was quite direct and just said, yep, essentially, yeah, we need a striker. I've got the quotes here. He said, I think for us, what's more important is the type of striker we get. We play a certain way. We demand certain things from a physical perspective, from the technical aspects of it, that it's going to be a striker that fits that mould. It's still the area of the park we're probably the thinnest when I talk about squad-wise at the moment, so obviously that's a focus for us. So that's the thing. It's all very well, as myself included, looking at this striker and saying, look how many goals they've scored in this league. They'd be perfect. But essentially, it needs to be a striker that fits his system. It needs to be someone that is very mobile, presses from the front, kind of almost a bit of a sacrificial lamb at times, gives himself to the team, but is also there to finish off. And Solanke's that. He is. I do kind of feel like, I've said this before, but I just always feel this way. If his name was Dominico Solanke, and he'd come from, I don't know, Brazil or somewhere like that, or I don't know, Portugal or something like that, then I think maybe people are like, yeah, spend the money kind of thing. But I just think, yeah, like I said, there's this kind of false thing really about he's only had one decent season. It's not true. And it is a big bit of money as well. There's kind of this thing about people wanting Spurs to spend money on players, which is true. And then when they're potentially going to splash 60 million maybe or 65 million on a player, I still think they'll look to try and include some players in the deal. But you're looking at that overall value, and it's like, yeah, but I don't want you spending that money on that person. He's not the one I wanted. I wanted that person over there, who maybe not Premier League proven, or maybe could be more of a gamble in the Premier League. Don't forget how burnt I think Spurs were by the Tommy Dembele deal. And probably Lo Celso to a degree. They spent huge money on these players that have never played in the Premier League, and they've come into the Premier League and not been able to adapt to it for varying reasons. But I do think that burns you as a football club from signing these players. And I think, you look at the signings last year that came from abroad, and even Van de Ven it's still like just under 40 million. It's less of a risk. So I think if they're going to spend that kind of £60 million, then you're probably going to do it on a player who is either, British or has Premier League experience. I do think it makes a lot of sense. I know it's not going to be. I've got this funny feeling that if they get Solanke, he's going to be one of those where you look back in 6 months to a year time, and I think people are going to go, okay, fair play. That's a player that fits the system. I do, and yeah, I just feel that. I do feel like that. I mean, even Tony, even Ivan Tony, Ivan Tony, his goal record is comparable with Solanke's over the last 4 years. I looked it up. Yeah, of course, you've got to take into account that he missed 6 months or the first half of last season, so you've got to take that into account. But yeah, it did relatively little in the second half of the season, but they're comparable. And I do find it strange. I agree with a lot of people that saying that why everyone seems to be swerving Tony so far this summer. I mean, there's various clubs that have gone out and bought. I mean, United bought Xerxes, slightly different kind of play, but a striker nevertheless, and could have got Tony for the same money but didn't. Arsenal have needed a striker, haven't gone there. Spurs, kind of distanced themselves from reports from him over the course of the summer. Whether, if they can't get Solanke, whether because the price being cheaper, whether they start to turn back in that direction, we'll see. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's certainly an interesting one with him as well, because obviously a bit older, but seemingly a cheaper price. But although I think Brentford, they've lost their striker, haven't they? Their replacement striker. So whether it becomes more difficult to let him go, I don't know. But I mean, I've seen people saying that Spurs should have signed Nicholas Fulkrug. Fulkrug? Yeah, that's right. The 31-year-old striker that West Ham have just signed for just under £30 million. I mean, I think he'll do well. I think physically, I think he's kind of ready for the Premier League. But, 31 years old, scored less goals than Solanke has in recent years as well. And he's never played in the English game. So I don't see the logic of not wanting Solanke and then wanting some like Fulkrug. I don't know why, but that name is really messing with my head trying to say it right, when it actually seems quite simple. Fulkrug. Yeah, I don't get it. It's almost like sometimes people want Spurs to spend more money on someone, and sometimes they'll say, why are you spending so much on them when you can get them for that price? It's like, we shouldn't care about the money, really, in terms of kind of spending too much. It's not our pocket money. It's not coming out of our bank accounts. I don't still get pocket money. That would be weird. Look, whoever Spurs end up signing this summer, the squad needs strengthening. There's no getting away from it. Of course it does. And Postecoglou, I spoke to him, during press conferences and sit down, and he admits, of course, in an ideal world, it would have got done sooner. Of course. There's no getting away from that it would have been better to be done. But he kept talking about the fact that the original targets remaining the ones that we're going for. And yeah, actually, we spoke in the I think it was Seb asked him the question about what he'd learned from last season. And he said, there's always learning. I mean, there's one glaring thing about last year, which was just, it was quite obvious we didn't have a squad that was equipped to handle the rigours of a Premier League campaign, particularly when you're trying to challenge and sustain some sort of level of intensity and competitiveness in the top first league in the world. It was obvious to me that if we had any setbacks along the way in terms of squad absences, we really felt it. Probably more than some of the other teams, our competitors up there. So that was something that we've tried to sort. And it wasn't surprising. For me, it was understanding that you really need a core group of players who are going to be able to maintain a level of consistency for us to challenge. And some of that is just because it was my first year. We had a lot of injuries, which I think was just the remnants of us training the way we train and the way we do things. You'd like to think this year we're a lot better equipped to handle that side of it, and some of it was just because it was new to the players. So yeah, my thinking is we've got to go beyond just building a team. We've got to build a squad to compete, and I think last year was more about trying to build a team that would give us a competitive edge. But I still think it's been a significant rebuild, but we're still in the midst of that. It was a squad, a group of players that was coming to a natural conclusion. You could see that even by the lengths of contracts in place. We had about 4 or 5 really key players all getting to the end of their contracts. So that told you it was a team at the end of the cycle. So obviously, bearing in mind that he said there that it was glaring last season that they didn't have the squad that he needed to compete, of course I said to him, well, with that in mind, you've only signed 2, albeit very talented, but 2 18-year-olds. Because Timo Werner, you could argue, was there before, so it's not an additional squad member. So he's got 2 new faces, but they're both young 18-year-olds. And he said, look, I don't think it'll all get done in this window. I've never believed in quick fixes, and I think I said that it would have been great if we'd done our business already, but I've always maintained a discipline not to go off and sort of get too emotional through these things. It's a difficult time. This is the part of the season where I've probably got the least control over decisions. And I've learned to stay disciplined and make sure that we do what we set out to do. We've added the 2 young guys, but I also think there's been growth from other guys from last year, which naturally makes us stronger this year. But yeah, we've obviously still got a hand in this window. But I think we'll go beyond this window. This wasn't just tinkering around the edges when I took over. It needed, a big shift from where it was. I was just thinking about last year's pre-season, actually. I reckon 50% of the people who were on that tour are probably not here now. So we've already done a hell of a lot and we don't need to do as much. But I still think, and he kind of stopped there. I'm presuming he was going to say something, I still think there's stuff to do. And then he said, because it's not just about having success in 1 year. What you're trying to build is hopefully another cycle of success. And I think that'll take a bit longer. So yeah, like I say, honestly, have a look at the stuff and sit down. There's so much from it. The bank stuff was fascinating as well. And just the way he communicates with people and how his life has dictated that. He's easily the best communicator of a manager I've interviewed. Mourinho was excellent, But I think with Ange, it's just. I think this is we've heard this before. I'm not breaking news here, but I think his storytelling is what he's so fantastic at. You do kind of listen to it and think, oh yeah, and the way he intertwines, like I said, life into football. It's very clever, the context he brings to it. But yeah, what else? I mean, we've seen Conor Gallagher heading to Atletico Madrid. It's an interesting one, that, in terms of, it kind of makes me wonder whether Chelsea just weren't looking to sell to a Premier League team, let alone a rival, or we're going to make it more difficult, more expensive, or potentially that just maybe Archie Gray has maybe his kind of how good he's been since he's come into the club has perhaps made them think maybe there wasn't as much need for Conor Gallagher there, because I will keep banging this drum. Archie Gray is going to be something special for Spurs. And I think this season, I don't even think it's a future seasons thing. I think, like I said, 52 games for Leeds last season. He is ready to have a full and busy and physical season. I think my belief is he's going to become Spurs Steven Gerrard. That's just my thought. Obviously, Gerrard was homegrown, but I just feel like he's going to become the leader of that midfield. And then you've got someone like Bergvall, who I think is going to be ready sooner rather than later. But they need more. They do need more. They really do. What other good stuff from the tour? Oh, the Aussie interview, Aussie Ardiles, was fun. He loves telling you a story as well, a bit like Ange. There's a little glint in his eye when he suddenly thinks of another story. Some great stuff about how he adapted to life in England with Ricky Villa. He said Ricky struggled a little bit. He was fine. He said they had a translator to begin with, and he was just like, no, I want to challenge myself to actually learn the language. And he said the last thing you learn when you're coming to England is the humour. He said it's like he would sit down and watch TV, and he'd have to just watch BBC News just to kind of understand the very good English that was spoken. And that was how he did it. That's not me doing that. That was the voice he did. It was excellent. And he said, but as soon as I got it, and he's like reeling off, he says, I love 40 Towers, I love Only Fools and Horses, Blackadder. They're all like his favourite comedy shows now. And he said that's something he always tells the players now is language. Get the language down, and that's it. That's all you need really to open up life for you in England and make you happier and adapt better. And he was saying that he kind of is a bit of, he is an ambassador for the club, but he works a lot. Whenever they have Argentinian players come in, he does quite a lot to try and help them just settle into life in England. He takes them out for these big kind of barbecues and things like this. It was very cool. And I asked him about Romero and Lo Celso. I asked him about Romero, and it was kind of a positive question. I was saying it feels like, especially with the vice captaincy, he's really got this extra discipline. And he said, well, and I'm going to even attempt to do his accent. I'm just going to say this in my voice. I think this is something that the English press have picked up on and tried to highlight the fact. Some of them say he's committing too many fouls. He's been voted, though, not just the best defender at the Copa America. He was the best player in the Copa America. That gives you an idea of how good he is. Wherever he goes, they say it. Messi says he's the best defender in the world. I would say the same thing. He is the best central defender in the world. So yes, in England they say, oh, he's a little bit rash. But no, he's a winner. He plays at a certain pace, and that involves taking challenges. He's taking a risk. But after saying that, there is some kind of justification in what you're saying. He has become more disciplined. And then with a little smile, he goes, I'll tell you a story. This is funny. Against Manchester United at home, I've got Ricky Villa with me. So Ricky said, we have to go and say hello to Kuti before the game. I don't normally go before the game to say hello to people, but I thought, yeah, no problem, we can do that. So we went and we said hello, no problem. And I said to him, Kuti, be careful, because they're kind of following you, the press, because you are. And he went like that, as if to say, you're banging into people. And he said to me, I got it, don't worry. And then he goes out in the first minute of the match, bang! It was so funny. He just wasn't listening to me very much at all. He plays in this way where he takes a risk, but it's wonderful. In fact, he could very easily go and play in midfield, a kind of defensive midfielder. He's very good with the ball. That makes him special because central defenders are normally strong, but he's also very good with the ball. His passing ability is very good. I asked him about Lo Celso because obviously with Lo Celso it hasn't really worked out for him. And I asked him, why do you think he hasn't made the impact that Romero has? And he said, adaptation. He's found it very difficult to adapt. Again, he's playing very well for Argentina. He's not, one of the top 11. He doesn't start the games, but he has been instrumental. Even with the goal for Argentina in the Copa America final against Colombia, his assist, it was magnificent. So he's been playing 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe 30, so on. But he needs, for a player to adapt, he needs more time. But on the other hand, nobody is going to give you time just because, hello, you're Giovanni Lo Celso, you're going to play 90 minutes. No. You've got to earn it. Basically, I believe that he's very suited to Argentinian football. For continental football, I would say in England, it's taken quite a period of time. I love talking to Aussie. It brought back memories. Back in my non-league days, I used to interview his son Pablo quite a lot. He was the manager of Hertford Town for a little while. And I used to sometimes ring Pablo at home and talk to him on the house phone. And he knew as a Spurs fan. And he said, look, if you ever want to talk to Aussie, just ring the house phone. He might pick up and have a go. So I would a few times try it, especially around World Cups and things like that, to try and get like his takes on things. And he was lovely. He was always very, very accommodating. But what I've noticed is then his English was a little bit more rudimental, a bit more basic. And that was only, I'll say only, it was probably quite a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe more, pushing 10, 12 years ago maybe. And it just shows you that even in that time, he's kicked it on a notch. His English is excellent. It's really, really good now. It's fantastic. I'm always very envious of people that can speak foreign languages. Oh, it's just reminded me because Spurs have tweeted it out. I went to this amazing art exhibition that was put within their hotel. They were staying at the Conrad Hotel in Seoul. And on one of the floors of the hotel, or one of the rooms anyway, or a big kind of banquet room, they had a competition where Korean Spurs fans had to enter their artwork. It could be painting, could be sketches, it could be sculptures as well. And they would kind of pick the best. And I just went into this room and honestly, probably 100, maybe more pieces of work. They were just fantastic. Have a look on I think I put it across all my social media, Twitter, my Facebook page, Instagram as well, some of them. Amazing bits of artwork. There's like this painting of Basuma that looks like a photo. So many of them are like photorealistic, just incredible. But also some cool stuff like more anime stuff or just kind of cartoon themes to them. Someone had made these little cards of every single player, including one of Postecoglou, all in various kind of clothing from different countries in Asia and things like that. And it's magnificent. It was brilliant. I must admit, full disclosure, I went in kind of thinking, okay, we're going to get here. We're going to get like kids' drawings kind of thing that you stick up on the fridge. I was so wrong. It was like walking around an art gallery, but it was all Spurs themed. It was so good. I don't know whether they were going to open it to the public or not. But I know that a lot of the players went round and they loved it. And they like asked for bits to be sent home. Some really good Richarlison stuff. Even the young players, there was a little print of, I think it was George Abbott, Jamie Donnelly, Mikey Moore, and might have been Will Hankshire. I can't remember who the fourth person was now, but it was four of them in a row. But yeah, look on my social media. Instagram's probably one of the easiest. I think I put more of them on Twitter, so it might be easy to... Oh no, my Facebook page, the Alistair Gold Journalist page on Facebook. I think I put every single photo I took on there, so have a look. It was very, very cool. It's just reminded me. Back to the sit down. Loads more stuff from it as well. Spoke to Ange about all the summer changes that are going on behind the scenes that we might not be aware of. Because obviously we know about the coaching staff. Nick Montgomery and Sergio Raimondo have come in with Chris Davies heading off to Birmingham City. Matt Wells being promoted to senior assistant coach. But there's also been other stuff going on as well. So Rob McKenzie is now the head of scouting. He's been promoted from chief scout. Chief scout has been taken on by Alex Fraser, who's another person that's come across from Aston Villa. Alex Fraser, the new chief scout, spent 3 years at Villa. He previously worked at Brighton, I think as under 21 scout, so we know about there. We've always said in the past, how do clubs like Brighton sign all these great young players? Well, they've brought across someone that was responsible for doing that. He was also 7 years ago, he was at Spurs with Rob McKenzie, funny enough. Johan Lang's restructuring has also brought in Max Legath, who's the first team scout. I think I mentioned this one before. He'd been head of scouting at Basel and not Basel for 40 Towers. And before that was the chief scout of Bayern's academy. So again, another good name. Also quite a big, not in recruitment, but a big departure from the club. Someone you might be used to seeing his face either in matches running onto the pitch or the Amazon All or Nothing documentary was quite big there as frustrating Jose Mourinho. Was Jeff Scott, head of medicine and sports science. He's been at Spurs 20 years. I think he's from New Zealand. He has left the club. His position has been filled by someone else. I haven't been able to find out exactly who that is yet. I'm still trying to find out, but I will. I'll get there. But yeah, so there's a new head of I think it's a different title, but essentially taking on the same role. So yeah, you've had all these changes behind the scenes as well. And in both the interviews I did with Decky and Destiny, they said to me that training felt different. Said it felt like, I think Decky said it was about they had added layers of stuff that they were being asked to do now. And Destiny said it's this confidence now that they've got and a belief in the Postecoglou system that they can now add extra things into it. So he says just this real confidence in training about what they're doing. So I put that to Ange in the sit down and I said, look, is it now this extra layer of tactical stuff can be added on top? And he said potentially it is about adding those layers, but I think it's something that I've always been conscious of. Everybody says you should feel fresh, and it helps. We've got new staff, new coaches in, new voices, new sports science head, new head of medical. So I think that helps because I've always been a bit wary of players coming back from pre-season and knowing what to expect. We want to improve, and if you're going to improve, you just can't sort of recap and dish out what we dished out last year. So I like things with a bit of freshness to it, but you do add layers. Obviously, that's the foundation we built last year. Players have an understanding of our game, and we have to be progressing in the areas we need to. So, I asked also with the two new coaches coming in, what had that changed on the training pitches and who was responsible for what? And he said, well, nothing too sort of radical. Again, I'm really keen on working them as a team. Keen on them working as a team, and they've been really good. I mean, the guys who were here last year have been fantastic in kind of indoctrinating the new boys into how we work and giving them the time to adjust. But in that context, I've always been sort of encouraging of all of them to take responsibility, and how that gets divided up during the year. We'll see how that develops, but at the moment we're working really well. Like I said, I think the players are appreciating having a couple of different voices, different skill sets coming into the coaching group, and hopefully that means that the players get more information about what they need to do. So, also, you might have remembered that I've said in previous videos, I did wonder how the dynamic would work of transplanting a manager and his assistant manager into the middle of another coaching setup with a young assistant manager ahead of them, and of course Postecoglou, the boss. Would Raimondo constantly be looking at Montgomery and like, what do you want me to do, boss? Oh no, you're not my boss. Or just kind of a feeling of having a manager who's been a manager. They won the A-League title together at Central Coast Mariners. They were at Hibernian. How does that all work? So I thought, might as well ask Postecoglou and see what he thinks about it and whether there's any kind of concerns that you might have had about doing that. He said, no, not really. I've never sort of worried about that stuff. To me, it's just about what kind of people they are. If they're the right kind of people, they'll fit into the structure. Ultimately, I lead it. So it all kind of falls under my responsibility. The guys who come in don't see themselves as the manager or assistant manager. They see themselves as part of a coaching group that will hopefully bring success to the club, and they want to contribute to that. For all of them, hopefully it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to develop, and as I said, an opportunity to contribute. It's a step up for both of them as well. It's a new level for them to work in. So, all the stuff I've heard so far seems to have been quite positive. So, so that's good. What else did I ask him? I asked him about, because all of his second season at clubs are always pretty spectacular. They're always a big kick on and normally bring lots of silverware as well. So I asked him kind of how far are you in the process of doing that at Tottenham as well. And he said, look, it's hard to say because it's not something I play up. For me, it's always just about sticking to the process of what I believe are the things that should be put in place to be successful. I think we laid some basic foundations last year. We're trying to build on them this year. And the one thing you can't control is the competition because they're doing their own things. But from our perspective, it's about building on the foundations of last year, making sure our players are better prepared this year than last for what's ahead, and we'll see where that takes us. In another quote, I haven't got it here, but he made a real point of saying he was quite kind of excited in a way that he could tell straight away in the first day of pre-season when a lot of the players that came back, he was like, they get it. He noticed that they came back in ready to give him exactly what he needed. He didn't have to go over everything again. He didn't have to remind them of the beliefs. They came straight in and were playing in the Postecoglou way. So it should all bode well. But look, of course they need new arrivals. They need new signings. They do. They need to add definitely a striker. I would like to probably see another creative attacking player as well myself. And I'd still say probably another centre-back as well. And there's potential for another midfielder, really. It's difficult because you want to bring in a midfielder, but you don't also want to block the path of Gray and Bergvall, because I do think they're going to have a massive contribution to make this season. But, yeah. So there you go. As a gift to you all, to try and, in the spirit of trying to get transfers going, I have got a couple of days off now. I'm going to take some much needed rest and relaxation. Only a little bit, only a few days. I'll be back for the Bayern game on Saturday. But I'm going to put my feet up, have some pasta and pizza and sunshine. You can probably guess where I'm heading off to, just because it's very cheap and easy from where I live. And hopefully that kickstarts things and gets transfers going, because we know it all seems to happen. I'll try to unplug, but I'm sure I'll be still tuned into what's happening and trying to find out various bits and pieces. Like I say, we'll see about Emerson. Again, that's not one for the aggregators to stick out there saying anything, because it's very much not properly sourced yet. It just kind of came into my head as we were talking about right backs. It may well be that Milan do come back in, but yeah, I think they've just got to, either Spurs have got to bend a little on the price, or Milan are just going to have to stump up the cash. And we'll see with Solanke how that advances. He is one of their, there are other potential striker targets as well, but I just feel Solanke fits. I do. And again, this is not me just saying it because it's currently, one of the main options. I've been saying this for a while. I want to listen to the podcast with Guesty. We have spoken about Solanke before and how he fits. I think he would be terrific. I think you put him into that Spurs attack, I think he's getting 25 plus goals this season. I do. I think he will feast upon what could be created with those chances. It allows Sonny to get back into, I still feel his best position is on the left, although he can do a very good job through the centre. And I think, Solanke with his physical presence as well, winning the ball up front. I think the defending starts from the front and it creates less chances at the other end as well. So, but we'll see. It's as always with these things, it's about the price. It feels like the market is starting to warm up now. Atletico doing a few bits and pieces, as you can see. And so I am going to head off. The tour is done. I am back. A little bit warm today, even though weirdly I've been facing much higher temperatures out there. Postecoglou will be working with the players on the Hotspur away pitches. You've got ones coming back. You've got the Bayern friendly, and then it all starts at Leicester in 2 weeks today, actually. So I'm very much looking forward to that. The Harry Winks derby, as I'm sure it won't be called, but be interesting to see him again. And essentially now is the time to do the finishing touches to preparations on the pitch for Postecoglou and off the pitch for him from those the powers that be, as it were. Johan Lang to get these deals done, and Daniel Levy and the club to get the money there for it to happen, because he needs it. He's being very composed and, as in his own words, unemotional right now about it all. But you can tell there's a little bit about him that would have loved, of course, to have had more deals done. But, there's still just under a month left of the window. There's plenty more to be done. And I still think the signings so far have been positive. I think Gray is going to be I do think he's going to be a world beater. I think he'll probably have an England appearance by the end of this season, if not more. Bergvall is going to be a big hit. Timo Werner, I still believe, and we've seen on this tour, that he's just going to provide those simple passes from the left into the box that are required. Beat the man, get the ball in, and if it is someone like Solanke or anyone else, they're going to gobble those up. But yeah, still lots to be done. But it would be great to get them in before the season starts, please. It'd be great to get someone in this week ahead of the Bayern game, but we'll see. Like I say, I'm taking the hit. I'm going to go and rest. I'm going to have a holiday. It's so difficult. I'm really going to struggle with having a holiday and resting and relaxing after the madness of the tour. But I'm doing it for you. I'm not. I'm just messing around. I'm doing it very much for me. Yeah. So, right, time to head off. Time to start packing again. I only just got in. Loads of things had to be washed and ready to head off again. But there you go. So only a few nights away. But hopefully that spurs them into action, to pardon the pun. Yeah, hopefully something happens even when I turn off this video. It seems to be the way it works sometimes. But yeah, time to head off. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Probably Sunday, I think. I'll do another video after the Bayern game, and hopefully we'll have more things to talk about. Goodbye.